When we connect, we survive. Friend of the show, Doc Shauna Springer, is back, and she's bringing a powerhouse of a new book titled Fallout, 10 Common Beliefs That Kill Our Bravest and the Truths That Can Save Them. And Doc means that literally. The standard playbook for our warrior community is broken, and it is costing lives. We're going to dismantle the compassionate-sounding myths that quietly cause real harm to the warriors we care about most. Plus, we'll get into her new mission with the Thin Line Advisory. Let's get into it.
Wake up to who you can be. Welcome to Men Talking Mindfulness.
Doc, welcome. Good to see you again. And I got to say, before you say anything, for those watching the show, Will, Doc, and I did not coordinate what we're wearing. We are literally all wearing the almost exact same color blue. I think it looks great, but I just want to put it out there. We did not coordinate this.
Yeah, I was like, should I go change, But something in me was like, I feel like blue today.
I think we all did.
We're all
I think
Smurfs.
we all did.
So
Yes, I know.
Right.
I miss the Smurfs.
Oh my gosh, the
good to have you
Smurfs.
here, Doc. I know, right? Wow. Good to have you here, Doc. Thanks for coming back. Everyone that's listening, we launched a new course in May. Doc, you might want to actually, tell your people about it. It's called Awareness to Action. It's on our website, Men Talking Mindfulness, to learn more about it. Or if you want to learn more about anything else that we're doing, you can just simply text MTM to 33777. We have a newsletter on our Substack, so there's lots of stuff going on over here. So get involved. Head to mentalkingmindfulness.com, and also the link's going to be in the bio as well. And we always have our standard one breath grounding practice, so we can, just calm ourselves down, get to know our breath a little bit, and let's begin with close your eyes if you like, if that's safe for you right now. Sitting up nice and tall so your lungs can come forward, so you can really begin to feel this breath. We're going to start with a nice exhale out the mouth. We're going to take 2 inhales. So fill the bottom, take an inhale. Hold for a moment, and then take a little inhale through the nose, top it off. And exhale, let that go all the way out. All right. So here we are.
I thought we were going to do a second one.
No, I know, right? I kind of felt. I was like thinking, you're picking up my vibes already, Doc. You're so intuitive.
No, I like that. I like that. And actually, I remember an episode you guys did years ago. It was all about how you should breathe in through the nose. Why.
Yeah.
You went deep on that, and I integrated that. And so now I try to breathe through my nose.
That was with James Nestor. That was one of our early New York Times bestsellers. But hey, Doc, always an honor to have you. Great to have you back. You've worked with the tip of the spear, right? The warriors. Your background was in the VA. You've written a book called Warrior, which I highly recommend to anyone who has served and anyone who is connected with anyone who has served. This new book, what was the exact moment you realized that you had to write this book?
Okay, so this new book, Fallout, 10 Common Beliefs That Kill Our Bravest and the Truths That Can Save Them. Bit of a provocative title. Just want to say, I don't think anybody's trying to kill our bravest.
Sure.
But I think the book came out of this observation repeatedly over many, many years, more than a decade, really, of being in a very unique role with people who have a warrior spirit. Just this disconnect between what is done for them in terms of treatment approaches, strategies, talking about, their challenges and what they actually need and feel. So I was having all of these conversations that were just disconnected from all of this public-facing, strategies and treatment approaches that don't really land for them. And you can only take that for about 10 years before you say, somebody ought to say something. And I guess it's going to be me, And so this book is my 4th book that's focused on the warrior. I wrote another book, but specifically warfighter and first responder, protector, defender community. And this one is all about these kind of insidious, well-intentioned beliefs, models, strategies, ways of talking about challenges that have kind of infiltrated our collective thinking that have been taking us in the wrong direction for over a decade, and how we need to think differently. It's a short book by design, and it's meant to really just get people thinking about a radically different approach to a lot of how we support protectors and defenders.
Wow. Well, take us deeper there as far as these beliefs. Like we think we're actually helping people, being more compassionate, doing the right thing, and they're actually doing the opposite of what they're intended. So, yeah. So tell us a little bit about that. And
Yeah, so there's more than 10. And like Murphy's Law, I wrote each chapter focused on one false belief and then explaining why it doesn't work for warriors
Mhm.
and protectors and defenders, and like what's a different way of thinking that is actually more aligned with their psychology, with their ethos, with their warrior spirit. And then as soon as I was done with the book, I thought of like an 11th one, of course,
Mhm.
probably a
Yeah.
week later. And so there's not just 10, but I'm going to actually talk about the 11th one right now because it's the one I wrote most recently. I wrote this up as the first of what became now a new column. So one of the things I've been doing since we last talked is I'm now doing a weekly column called Mental Edge Mondays for Crackle
Nice.
Magazine. Crackle Magazine is primarily for firefighters and EMS paramedics. A lot of people that subscribe are in those two groups, but there's also first responders and veterans that read the magazine as well. So every Monday I write on a topic, and this one was about how dark and self-destructive thoughts don't necessarily mean that someone is suicidal, right?
Mm.
Because I was socialized as a psychologist. That was my training. I got years of training on how to assess and understand suicide risk when it
Mhm.
comes into your office. And a lot of that just doesn't apply for this specific community. So there's a lot of talk about how we have to be culturally sensitive and, adapt to the people that you're meeting with, but it actually functionally doesn't happen that way in a lot of clinical settings. And I think most of the time, if you go in and you talk with a psychologist about suicidal thoughts, that they will typically say, okay, you're suicidal. You're having the
Mm.
thoughts, so you must be suicidal. And so that is very dangerous because there are lots of reasons why people have dark and self destructive thoughts, especially in this community, and they are not always indicators of suicidality.
Mm.
So, for example, people that are exposed to a lot of attempted suicides, completed suicides, they're exposed to that. It's going to be in their mental landscape. Those images, those intrusive images are going to pop up all the time. And if you are thinking like a civilian psychologist, you're thinking, okay, if someone has suicidal thoughts or images, that means they're
Mm.
suicidal, then you will treat them in a certain way as potentially higher risk. You'll jump right into suicide assessment without understanding that actually these thoughts are completely common, completely a predictable form of mental warfare among this population just because of sheer exposure to death and
Yeah.
dying and suicide. So when you look at the ethos of protectors and defenders and their culture, if you're treated like someone who's at risk for suicide, and you're not actually at risk for suicide, it's just mental, dark and destructive images from everything you see on calls you take all day, there's implications to that about whether you're going to lock it down and not talk about it at all, right? So you don't want to be assumed to be suicidal if you're not. And you don't want to treat, patients in a way that doesn't fit with where they're actually at. And so that's just like an 11th one, but there's 10 of them in the book from, awareness campaigns probably increase risk. They're not what people need. Your course, Awareness to Action, is very much on point with
Mm.
my work and, my philosophy as well, is that it's time to move beyond awareness. People need insight. They need strategies,
Mm.
solutions. This book is a book for people of action to not
Mm.
only understand, but to take action on a different way of thinking.
Yeah.
Let's take that one a little bit further, right? So you're taking that hard swing at those suicide prevention awareness campaigns. We all see them on social media. There's different numbers, and people will talk about, hey, we have to increase awareness. We have to increase awareness. And they see that as the goal. and you actually see it as a driver of helplessness in the warrior
Mm.
communities.
Yep.
Can you talk us through that that disconnect, if you would?
Yeah, it's the disconnect I was talking about earlier. So all of this money and energy and focus has been on showering us with statistics about how many people, are dying by suicide. And nobody has the real actual data, but we, think we do. And so we say what we know. And it's very alarming. And I've seen people use alarming approaches like during the time I gave this talk, X number of people have died by
Yeah.
suicide. Like
Mm.
that kind of
Yeah.
stuff is like
Yeah.
just ubiquitous, like throughout. And it's got to stop because what warriors and first responders are telling me is we know the cost. We have been at more funerals than most civilians have been because we've lost people we would take a bullet for to suicide. And we don't need awareness. All of that just makes us feel like this is a runaway train that can't be stopped. It increases our sense of helplessness, and
Mhm.
helplessness is intolerable for people with a warrior spirit. So
Mm.
it's increasing the things that are actually going to increase suicide risk, feeling like, well, I'm going to become, part of that statistic. And I've actually reviewed suicide notes that have that language in it. Well, I guess
Oh,
I
really?
became a part of that statistic. That has
Mm.
to stop. Like, we are predicting that people are going to be vulnerable to suicide in a way that's creating helplessness, as
Mm.
opposed to compare all of that with different kind of messaging. This is how I talk about it in my work. Mental warfare is part of your chosen path. You're one
Yep.
of society's strongest and bravest. I am here to help you understand, to see the matrix on mental warfare. How does moral injury, suicide, grief and loss, survivor guilt, and other challenges, how do these things come at us? And how can we address them head on so that we can overcome them? And you can have a sustainable career and stay at a peak performance level over the arc of a 20 or 30-year career. Because I don't think it's inevitable that people will have a bad mental health outcome for going into this profession. Without support and insights, many more will. But with the right supports and the right treatment, people can sustain peak performance over the long arc of their career.
Mm. Well, you mentioned treatment and you mentioned, trauma, grief, and moral injury, and typically, they're kinda lumped together as, like, one
Yes.
kind of treatment, and this is something that you actually delineate as different and separate and needing different or needing, like, different types of treatment, correct?
Yeah. And again, not stuff I learned in graduate training. Um,
Mm.
spent
You're out in the
many
field,
years in,
warrior, for the warriors,
yeah,
Yeah.
for the warriors, but for everyone, So
Okay.
one of the
Right.
courses I did for the NFL Foundation, which I can send you for the show notes, so you can
Oh, yeah.
post it if you wish, was how grief and trauma are different things and need a different approach. And I think this is true for everyone, not just for people with a warrior spirit. But then there is that level you just mentioned, Will, is that the approaches that I learned were based on civilian psychology, which is
Mm.
very different set of psychology, ethos, values than the populations that I now work with most closely. And a lot of it cannot just be migrated to them and, adapted, throw in, sprinkle a little resilience, throw a grit word here and there, and then just add water, rinse and repeat does not work for this
Mm.
population. So I think grief and loss, never had a course in that. Most people don't. I think how do you take people through that? But it's psychological. It can be a trauma, but a different kind of trauma. Moral injury, also newer. A lot of people don't have a model for how it's different from PTSD and how to treat it, how it needs a different treatment approach. And people who are in grief often won't tell you. They won't tell you for a number of reasons, but one of the most interesting ones is that take a warrior with grief, and they often will lock it down, keep it in their vault, because they are afraid, understandably, that if they talk about that pain, that a psychologist will do the same thing with that pain as we would do with trauma, which is, okay, let's process it. Let's expose you
Mhm.
to it so we can move on and put that in the rearview mirror.
Yeah.
And with grief, healthy grief is not about saying goodbye. It's not about processing out the memory and forgetting the person you lost. It's completely different. And so
Mm.
most people don't have a model for that. And when I go in and equip peer support teams in public safety departments, that's what I do. Is I equip those teams with a whole new set of insights so that they're actually learning more than a lot of conventionally trained psychologists get trained to understand to support protectors and defenders.
Definitely thankful for the work that you're doing here, Doc, in the book. Clearly, in the book, you mentioned the 11th belief that is not in the book, but the 10 that are in there that, again, well-meaning, but the awareness campaigns as a primary solution, just increasing awareness, promoting resilience, reduces risk, asking people very direct questions, and that's what we were taught in the military. You've got to ask
Mm.
the questions. Hey, are you considering hurting yourself? Are you considering taking your life? That is a best prevention method. Suicide is selfish. I've definitely heard that plenty of times.
Mm.
Avoiding public memorials, the myth that every suicide is preventable, the quote unquote well-loved myth, the assumption that at-risk warriors know that they are at risk, courage as the main barrier, and then PTSD as a life sentence. And we're going to get into depth on several of those. I don't think we'll get all 10 of them, but in the writing, you use a phrase, when we connect, we survive. And that phrase is kind of woven throughout. It's the kind of the heartbeat of your work.
It
Why
is.
is genuine connection the structural thread that must run through all 10 or now 11 of these beliefs?
Yeah. So, I mean, you've read my book, Warrior, John. And
I
so
did.
this book is
Phenomenal.
actually part of a 3-part series, is how I think of it. So, Warrior was the first one. Warrior was largely about kind of introducing the concept of doctors versus docs as being different things. Like, who do veterans or people with a warrior spirit, who do they drop their emotional armor with? What kind of people are they comfortable to build trust with? Deep trust, where they talk about what's actually going on in their headspace. And it was about things like anger and grief and loss and moral injury and shame and guilt and relationships and a lot of introductory topics. This book is kind of more than 10 years later. What are we still really not understanding around how we support protectors and defenders? These are the big kind of thinking and belief systems. And as you just really nicely summarized, a lot of those belief systems, well intentioned as they are, taking us in the wrong direction. And then
Mm.
when I have time, I'm going to come back to kind of some more, here's what actually works. And I'm actually writing right now, I'm finishing up a workbook for treatment centers that has a lot of that. Here's what you actually need to help people understand, and here's how you move people of action through, in this case, addictions to substances. So I'm already kind of writing things like that, but I felt like I had to kind of first say, like, here, let's see the problem with clarity, and that's what this book is really about.
Yeah, and Will and I have spoken regularly about that genuine connection too. I mean, we've just had an episode 2 or 3 weeks ago about having connection, and how that can really just change your perspective on so many things in your life, and give you, a sense of purpose. I don't know, a sense of support. Like
Yeah.
there is just so much value in that. But
I
Will,
realize I
what
didn't
you got?
answer your question like at all.
No, it's all good.
Yeah.
At all. So
I
you
was
asked
I was
me,
trying to subtly nudge you there.
I got you. I'm picking up what you're um so why is when we connect we survive like the heartbeat of my work was your question. So let
Yeah.
me now that I'm reminded. Um I think it's because, we think that all of this fancy stuff that we do is like the ingredient that really turns people and that
Mm,
saves people and that helps them. And I mean, don't get me wrong, like insight is critical to have the right insight. And treatments are very potentially life-saving, but ultimately a lot of what actually turns people away from the precipice is authentic connection with someone that gives a shit.
mm,
That's it, over and over and over. So now it sounds easy. It's actually really hard though, because you to get there, to be that person that walks the trenches of mental warfare with someone, whether you're a peer support specialist, whether you're coaching someone through it, whether you're a licensed professional with years of training, understanding mental health challenges, you still have to be able to have the insights so that you're credible and can have
right.
range in terms of what you can share with them, how you can help them. But that moment of connection is often what changes a nearly fatal or fatal outcome into something where somebody says, I'm going to stick around and open myself up to hope and what's possible here.
Well,
Beautiful.
it's one thing we've been seeing and continually talking about. It's amazing. It's a theme. I feel like I say it every episode, John. It's like the power of connection. So what is it about, connection that could, help someone not to make that ultimate choice? Like what are the like not the ingredients, but there's like with all your expertise, you've been in the trenches for so long doing this work, and this is like a big theme of your book. It's like connecting to other people. So what is it about connection that is just stronger than any kind of like tool or medicine or practice that we can kind of do?
Yeah. I mean, because you can deploy tools, medicines, practices, but especially for people with a warrior spirit, they are interdependent largely in their psyche. So
Mm,
they're not people that relate as coworkers, but as a tribe, that
okay.
they are radically re-socialized. I think it's true for a lot of people, but I'm talking especially about people with a warrior spirit. When you've become radically re-socialized to be willing to take a bullet for somebody, fight for the person on
Mm,
your right and left, go through hardships that most people can't imagine, make tremendous personal sacrifices for the good of the tribe, for the good of the group. One of the most dangerous headspaces is I'm alone or I'm different. I don't belong. I'm in
mm,
this fight alone. All of that thinking is really dangerous. So
mm,
for this particular group, that moment of connection that says, oh, it's not just you, by the way, that's having dark and self-destructive thoughts. Oh, I've had nightmares that I murdered my wife that I love too.
mhm,
Or it doesn't mean I want to do it, but I've had those kind of intrusive, distressing nightmares or intrusive
mm,
thoughts. It's not just you. You're not crazy. There's a path back. There's hope. And we will do this together. That is how they move through physical warfare is as a unit, and they need a unit to move through mental warfare. And that's where we
mm,
kind of get it wrong a lot of times when we say, get thee to a doctor. That's you and a doctor who might have some insights, but I'm not a fan of just get thee to a doctor. I've
mm,
always written about for years, for a decade. It's we need a communal, tribal response. And get
mhm,
thee to a doctor is not the right mentality because it makes people feel cut off from the tribe and that they're different from other people and they're sick and they need to go over there and get well, right? It's very shaming and alienating. Versus a doc is an extension of your tribe. You have a tribe that stays connected with you through this. You have peers that are there for you when you need it in a responsive way outside the clinical hours that that doc is meeting with you, and you're supported by this tribe and you support the other people in the tribe. You're not just taking, you're a functional part of giving and taking within this interdependent tribal unit. That's what I think people really need and that's what they respond to in this community.
wow.
And in this community, well, one, you mentioned, this feeling of like shame, right? Um, and in this community, one of the things that we hear regularly is be more resilient. And you argue that um, is actually damaging. And rather than resilience, which incidentally I teach now, I'm going to have to go back and change my entire book, Doc.
Oh, yeah, change our everything, a lot of different things,
Everything,
Doc.
everything. But rather than the word
No, no,
resilience, you talk about elasticity, because resilience can telling someone, "Hey, be more resilient," that can actually feel like an insult, to those who have
mm.
already built
Yeah.
a lot of resilience. They've gone through a lot. They've endured a lot. Why is elasticity a superior phrase, I guess?
Yeah, it's a better direction. I think it's a better target for
Yeah, what do you mean when you say elasticity?
growth.
I'm like, what's I understand, like,
Yeah.
is rubber band you're trying to stretch? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Is that what's going on here? Or, or
But
similar?
right, it's a neutral term, right? You don't know what it means.
Yeah, right,
That's part
yeah,
of
I
the
mean,
beauty of it.
please.
You think of a rubber band, it doesn't come loaded. It's not a loaded
Mm,
term. Okay, so I'll
mm.
define it, but I think I wanna go to what John's saying real quick
Oh,
and
yeah,
just
please,
kinda double
please.
tap that, and then I'll come back and
Yeah,
define what
yeah.
I mean. So for years, we've had resilience-focused approaches, and I
Mhm.
start from the premise as a doc that walks with warriors. You are already one of society's bravest, most resilient people. So, who am I to come in and teach you to be more resilient? Now, John, it's a little different if you, as a Navy SEAL, come in and help, mentor some people up in some of the resilience techniques. And I don't know that you need to go back and change everything, because part of it is the who,
Thanks.
right? Like, who is saying this? And so, part of what I take issue with is outsiders who have no idea what it took to get there or stay there or do that work or be a first responder who answers those calls. One of the things that's interesting is in the military, you have scouts, you have recon, you have surveillance. Well, police don't have that. And in certain areas, they go out, Chicago, LA, and it's very dangerous on certain, you know, beats that they are in charge
Sure.
of. They don't have surveillance and recon and all the information about what risks they're facing. So they're like going in and like taking Fallujah every day. I mean, in a sense of like, who knows what's behind that door full of people addicted to drugs and high out
Sure.
of their mind and like with weapons in the house. Like, who knows, right? And
Every
they're
stop. I
holding
mean,
that
just
kind
imagine
of
every stop.
right. Every
Right.
traffic
I have
stop
no
in
idea.
certain, in certain areas. And so, um, to do that job requires a level of resilience people don't even understand. And so I was partly taking issue with outsiders kind of saying, I'm going to do a resilience training. I find that offensive and they're offended by it. And so that's that disconnect, right? But there's also
Gotcha.
a deeper psychology that's worth mentioning, which is
Mm.
that when we uphold resilience as the goal, resilience is bounce back from adversity, right?
Mhm.
It takes you from here to here. You should bounce back. Resilient people are people that continuously bounce back from adversity over and over and over again. They're already doing that. And everybody, by definition, is resilient until they're not. And so that's part of the problem is if you uphold a resilience model, then when a person, not if, hits that wall because there's enough cumulative trauma that has been unaddressed because they don't have connection to a good doc, they don't have the right insights, they don't have the right treatments. When they hit that wall, there's a split that happens internally versus how they're projecting. And they're still operational. A lot of times they're still reporting for duty, they're still functioning at a very high level operationally, and they're sort of like privately dying on the inside, privately
Mm.
withdrawing, privately struggling with alcoholism, addiction, broken marriages, all kinds of things that are happening and they're still operational. So you often don't really see it and, you don't see it until it's really kind of far gone. And so they're trying to hold that resilience. I'm resilient, so I'm gonna keep surviving, I'm gonna keep pressing on. And it becomes like this white knuckle point of pride that moves you farther away from being able to seek help, right?
Mm.
So if we look at elasticity now, to your question, Will, like, what the heck does it mean? I like
Mhm.
it because it's neutral. So here's how I define it. Elasticity is a range of motion, flexibility and range of motion in your nervous system, identity, and relationships. One of the short books, I forgot about, this is like a fifth one that I really didn't write. I just contributed a chapter to. It's called Elastic Identity. Very short, very powerful. I don't make any royalties from that one. Nobody makes money on books anyway, but Elastic Identity, it's on Amazon, and it really talks about what does it mean to have an elastic identity, to
Yeah.
have flexibility and range of motion and how we show up for different people and different roles. And how you cultivate that is much more associated with peak performance than a resilience focused model, which is only based on half the equation, how you bounce back from trauma after
Mhm.
trauma. So it's about your identity, it's about your nervous system, it's about your relational capacity to shift gears and interact with the different people in different ways. Um, and one of the interesting things is that I work with a company called Magnus 360, which is a peak performance platform for public safety primarily. And with that partnership, I've created a 12 item. I think they offer it for free if people want to jump on there as a kind of intro to the app. It's the Springer measure of elasticity. It's 12 items long. And the questions are not stigmatizing in the way that a resilience focused questionnaire would be. So if you gave, I was just thinking about this yesterday, you gave a bunch of first responders a measure of resilience, regardless of how they were actually doing, they would probably say, I'm good, I'm squared away. It would tell you nothing, it would predict nothing, it would be unhelpful. If you
Mhm.
give people the Springer measure of elasticity, and we have over 5,500 times,
Wow.
to first responders, then they respond in a totally different way. So one of the
Mm.
questions is, when my phone rings, the first thing I think is, did something bad happen?
Mm.
That's not stigmatizing. That's a thing that many first responders get to a place where their elasticity is compromised enough that the phone becomes a trigger for them in terms of what bad thing happened, right? So
Mhm.
they will say, "Yeah, I think that way." And then it's one of 12 items that I put together to measure this flexibility in your nervous system, identity, and relationships. And we've done it with 5,500 first responders at this point. So I can tell you that about a quarter of them are in a really dangerous place in terms of their loss of
Wow.
elasticity. And when they're in that red zone, because they kind of color coded the outcomes. I think it's green,
Sure.
yellow, orange, and red, or something like that. When they're in that red zone, they're at risk for not only cardiac problems from just the ongoing cumulative strain,
Mm.
but
Mm.
relationship conflicts and breakups and relationship outcomes, addictions, and dark and destructive thoughts that actually lead somewhere we don't want to go. So um yeah, it's totally different term, and when I say,
Mm.
like, let's focus on being elastic versus resilience, I can tell you that people's shoulders drop and they go, "I can do that." That's a
Mhm.
goal I can get after, is increasing my flexibility and range of motion. It doesn't come with a moral dimension of, "You
Yeah.
should be more resilient," is what a lot of the other stuff implies, or you're lacking in resilience, or you need to be taught by an outsider to be more resilient. It
Yeah,
has
it's almost binary in some ways. It's like this
Yeah,
binary, like you're just bouncing back and forth instead of like I love you talk about you have a range
yeah,
in which, elasticity could it could exist.
the
And yeah,
full
exactly.
range.
Exactly. Exactly. But it
That's
also
it.
has many different, attributes to it, like you were mentioning, which is
Mhm.
great. Instead of it just being about like, was I able to get up after this horrible event or something like that. So
Yeah,
yeah.
like, can you get responsive quickly to the urgency of a call, if you're a
Mhm.
firefighter? And then can you lead your nervous system back down to a place where you can go home and connect with your kid and enjoy
Mhm.
it,
Yeah,
not just white
exactly.
knuckle it?
Exactly. So it's like, you could downshift if you need to and upshift when it's needed. And then you just like, yeah, it's like an engine instead of just a label or something like that. So
Mhm.
excellent. Excellent.
Um, I want to move away from the elasticity piece, not away from it, but move on to the next thing here. In our community, and special operations specifically, and I know that this is rampant across many different services and first responders, but in the past 10 years, naval special warfare has lost an inordinate number of folks. And there's this feeling of, I hate that we lost that warrior initially. And then once we get past that, there's always the, how could he do that to his family? How could
Yeah,
he
about
do that?
suicide? Lost to suicide?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Lost to suicide.
Okay.
Yes. Sorry. Um, there's this sense of, okay, that was so selfish. Um,
Mm,
and the community it does that. How,
yeah.
you describe, loss by suicide, as an insurgency of the mind rather
Yep.
than the selfish act. How does that viewing suicide, like, that's one of the things that we've been told is, hey, it, don't do it because it's selfish. You're leaving your family behind. How could you do that to your wife? How could you do that to your children? How could you do that to your brothers? But it sounds as though from your angle that adding that shame to the equation actually increases the risk. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, it certainly can, right? So again, not something I learned in graduate school. In graduate school, I learned how to use fairly face valid measures of suicidality, asking blunt questions, to really get after it. Don't be afraid to ask the question kind of mentality. What I never learned was the inner psyche of someone who's suicidal. I
Hmm.
learned that partly from my 3 years at work at TAPS, Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors. I got a world-class, in the field education on grief and loss, how it's different from trauma, from supporting families who had lost their loved one to suicide and the warriors who had lost their brothers and sisters to suicide. And I got it from being in the woods with warriors, who taught me and told me, read the Marine Rifle Squad manual and then translate it into tactical terms. Help us understand, bring together the field of psychology with mental warfare, and help us interpret and understand mental warfare and how it develops and how it affects people. And so I don't talk about it in clinical terms. I talk about in terms of when people go down this tunnel of despair and they hear the voice of hopelessness. They hear the voice of despair. What are they hearing in their head? What kinds of thinking do they have? And it's an altered state of consciousness. And so I think, when we apply morality, we're missing the point of what actually suicidal thinking is and how it represents a very altered state of consciousness. The same way that if somebody who is anorexic, who's medically starving and needs to eat, will look at themselves in the mirror and say, I'm so fat, I just need to
Hmm.
keep starving myself. And so I think a lot of the, using again this shame-based philosophy to move people, it doesn't lead anywhere good. First of all, it misunderstands the true inner psyche of somebody who's in that suicidal mode or mind state. It's well-intentioned. It was, used by certain faith systems with the idea that it would be a deterrent. That if you
Mm.
don't bury people who die by suicide in the same cemeteries and you say this is a sin, that maybe would deter. So it's always been done, I think, with either people that don't understand it or they're trying to prevent it, right? I wrote an article for Police One on what people actually mean when they say suicide is selfish. And it means
Mm.
a few things. It means I don't understand it. I'm angry because I lost people and I'm expressing my anger. Um, or because I don't remember what it was. There was like a few things that I broke down about what are they actually saying to you when they say suicide is selfish. But to your point, it doesn't work. And when you show up at memorials and you say, we're not going to memorialize this person because of how they died, think
Mhm,
about the
mhm.
fact that at a memorial, you have like this group of people who are impacted by this suicide. And maybe some of them are struggling themselves with the same thoughts of despair. And when you shame somebody they love, does that actually like move them more towards like connection and hope? Like when we connect, we
Yeah.
survive? Or does it move them more towards, I'm shameful, I'm the problem, I'm the outlier, I'm the threat, and I need to take
Mhm.
myself out? Does that
Wow.
make
Yeah, no,
sense?
that absolutely it does. And um, I want to take that question and flip it upside down. The almost the opposite is there's for those who feel it's selfish, the person who may be considering their suicide or may actually take their lives, some of them see it as the opposite, right? They
Selfless.
see it as selfless.
Yeah,
And that's
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 right.
where you talk
Um,
about the one of the myths is the idea that being well loved is going to stop suicide. For the warriors, those first responders, men and women, for those who are wired to protect.
Yeah.
How does love get kind of twisted into this justification for actually leaving?
Yeah, because war like, again, the standard way of thinking in civilian psychology is not the story of suicide for this
mm,
population. Like, it needs a new set of insights, and so people in this community, as you know, are other focused. They're
mm,
protective of others they
mm,
love, and so when you start to think, "I'm the problem, I'm the threat to my family's future well-being or safety," it's the opposite of a selfish mentality. It's a well-intentioned, I'm the problem, I'm the threat, and they put themselves in the, you know, sort of target and then they move with purpose. That's a dangerous lie. It's a fundamental lie that, your death is a gift to your loved ones. It's a fundamental lie that drives a lot of suicidal thinking in this community. It's a distorted thought coming from an altered state of consciousness that is
Right.
irrational. What your loved ones want is for you to actually connect with docs that get it, to learn the insights that you need to walk through the tunnels of mental warfare, come out the other side, get innovative treatments if you need them. They want you to heal. They want the person they remember back. And that's possible with the right insights and the right approach. But a lot of people get really deep down in that tunnel and they think, I can't be saved. There's no way back. I don't see a road back home. And so
mm,
then they move as confirm here, as so many warriors have to me, it's not about selfishness. It's actually, it feels like the opposite when you're at the end of the tunnel. It feels like you're giving a gift to your loved ones. And that's kind of the perversion of the voice of your demons.
Yeah, you mentioned something, Doc, there, innovative treatments, right? And because of you, I've gotten the dual sympathetic reset stellate ganglion block. And let's talk about that quickly. Not so much about. I mean, yes, it's in your book, but you view that post traumatic stress as a physiological injury that can be healed. And for those listening who feel stuck and feel that there might not be help, what is the dual sympathetic reset, and how does the procedure work as that reset button for that hair trigger
mm.
nervous system? I guess.
Yeah, no, hair trigger nervous system is exactly the term I use to describe it, kind of based on the concept of trigger finger when
Right.
your muscles and tendons get locked into position because you from overuse. It's kind of a repetitive use injury. When you hit your nervous system with enough adrenaline over enough time, it can get locked into the on position. This is predictable, right? I mean, the hopeful thing that unifies all of my work is not just when we connect, we survive. It's that mental warfare is predictable. And what we can predict, we can understand and we can overcome, right? So if you know that you're going to get this situation where a cumulative load of trauma is going to lead your nervous system to get locked in, that whole treatment method comes from let's treat the system, let's treat the injury, as well as addressing the psychology of trauma, right? So for years, we've been sort of stagnated on this model and here I'm a psychologist saying, I don't think that talk therapy should be the first intervention for most people anymore in this community.
Mm.
Kind of controversial, right? Very
Yeah,
threatening to a
very.
lot of
yeah.
talk
What is that?
therapists.
What is like? That's like been the standard model, I'd imagine. Since you've stepped into the arena. So, what is you know, from your experience, like, what's the best path forward?
Yeah, it has been the standard model. It's like, well, go talk to a therapist. And then
Mhm.
only if that doesn't work, we're going to get you some other stuff, on the
Yeah.
biological front. And usually that other stuff is medication that
Yeah.
you have to
Yeah.
be on for the
Yeah.
rest of your life, or that has
Yeah.
sexual side effects or other side effects that impact your life. So
Mm.
the change, Will, is if you think about what happens in a therapy session, people have to do a lot of work. Like, it's exhausting. Like, therapy is work. And
Yeah, it is.
if you're fighting an uphill battle against your adrenaline, you're trying to swim upstream against a steady flow of adrenaline, and you're not sleeping at night because you're up all night with trauma, nightmares and intrusive images. You're so hypervigilant that you're not even with somebody in the room, right? You're distracted by this movie that's playing out across your retinas that no one else can see, but you can see it. Um,
Mm.
if you are hair trigger irritable, and your family relationships are breaking down, like, all this stuff is happening, and we're asking you to, like, get calm and concentrate and go back in time, go forward in time, integrate new insights. Like, people are not even really with you in the room. That was the humbling realization I had. And when I thought about it,
Mm.
I was like, well, okay, if you broke your knee, you'd get the surgery first to address the injury, and then you do the rehab.
Mm.
So why aren't we using the same method? And furthermore, to even go deeper on this, if you have a life-threatening condition like cancer, let's say somebody gets diagnosed with cancer, they don't say to you, well, we're going to try a little bit of this and see if it works. They properly code that as a potentially life-threatening condition, and they're going to throw a full-on assault at you. What is the
Mm.
most firepower we could throw at this thing? They go to the most effective thing first. So why aren't we doing this with post-traumatic stress injury? It's a life-threatening condition. You have people that die by suicide in naval special warfare because their trauma has never been successfully addressed. So if you wait and keep the most powerful, innovative treatments as a last resort, you'll lose people in that delta
Mm.
between where they need help and where you actually stepped in to help them. If we reorganize the whole model, though, around treat the injury first and then meet with a doc that gets it, then this biological treatment becomes primer to the paint of everything else. If people are in the room with you, they can concentrate, they're cognitive, they're getting better sleep. All of it is much more fluent, and they get traction that they cannot get unless you treat the injury first. So one of the articles I can reference, it's got a paywall, but it was for military neurorehabilitation was the journal, I think. It was my argument for why we need to change the model and
Yeah.
how we need to sequence it with biological treatment first and then biological treatment. And a lot of the thing that's done to kind of modulate, regulate the nervous system is good. I know, Jon, you do wonderful work with mindfulness and meditation, but the problem with using that as a substitute is that
Mhm.
there's a distinction between things that you do to reset the nervous system, like to reset a nervous system that is locked in the on position, versus things that you do to kind of maintain a nervous system that's become more regulated. And I think all of those things are great at regulating and changing, the nervous system regulation on the day to day. So they're extremely valuable, but I would sequence them after the treatment for the same reasons as I would sequence talk therapy after the treatment. I think that's all part of the rehab is uploading all those new skills, probably stuff you're teaching in your course is going to be a
Mhm.
great pairing with getting the injury addressed. And so that's
Mm.
why. What is it? I need to define that. The dual sympathetic reset stellate ganglion block is 2 injections about here and here in the neck. We're injecting ropivacaine or bupivacaine, which is not psychedelic. It's not psychoactive. It's a routinely used anesthetic medication like Novocaine at the dentist. and it reboots the fight or flight system. It brings
Wow.
a system that is locked into fight or flight back to calm and control. And when that happens, you can get traction in therapy, you can make changes, you relate to
Right.
your loved ones in a totally different way, and it unlocks a lot of what people kind of know how to do. Like a lot of people have coping skills, but they can't access them when they're in fight or flight.
And
Wow.
I've had it. I've had the Stella Gang of the Block, the dual-sided or dual sympathetic reset. Um, you get it in a couple of days apart, 2 shots in one side of the neck, 2 shots in the next, a couple of days later. And immediately afterwards, you get this really droopy eye, and
Yeah,
it's creepy looking,
it's
but
creepy, but it's
the
good. We want to see
but it
that.
is good. It is good. It's an incredible treatment, and I'd never thought about getting the treatment before you do any type of therapy, and the metaphor of the injury, broken knee or whatever, you go and get your surgery, and then you get the physical therapy afterwards. That's genius. I think that should be promoted much more highly.
Yeah.
Me too. Nobody knows about it. I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't
Yeah.
have 200,000 followers like you, so
Ah.
promote it. You know,
Well, hopefully
like
I'll promote it. I'll
nobody knows
promote it
about
today.
this. I feel like I largely labor in obscurity, saying please, like that munch, like the scream, like stop, and this book is that, like please let's think differently about this. Treatments like the dual sympathetic reset that Stella Mental Health does at 20 clinics, most people still have never heard about this. And it's not for lack of trying. I've written articles for Fraternal Order of Police, Police Chief Magazine. I just wrote about it Monday in my Crackle Magazine firefighter column about the DSR, SGB. And like I've written about it in CNN. Like whoever you're getting your news from, like I'm trying to write about it and I can't tell you how many people have said, I wish I had known about this 15 years
Mm,
ago when I was married to someone I loved and lost
mm,
because I couldn't
yeah.
control my fight or flight system. So yes, I would love your help getting the word out,
Yeah,
but it's it's
I'll
a
do it.
it's a simple change that would change everything about how we approach mental health and mental warfare.
Mhm.
Yeah, Will and
Yeah.
I will definitely help
Yeah,
with
for
that.
sure.
I mean, clearly the show is going to help ideally, and then we'll
Yeah.
put it out on social as well. Um, Go for it, Will. You
No,
got
so I
something?
mean, we've talked a lot about the problem, what old methodologies look like, what you're proposing, Doc, which I think, which is, I love your experience with this, and it sounds spot on. So let's take like the next steps. Like, so what, if somebody's hearing this, leader that's out there today, or just an individual, it's like, what's one of the first moves that they should make?
Reach out to me and let me share whatever you need to see to establish the safety, efficacy, ask me
Mm,
questions about what it costs. This is not where Stella Mental Health makes big profit margins.
mhm,
Stella, offers this treatment for much lower than market cost. And I have a
mhm,
little bit of funding right now for some veterans to get this treatment. And depending on what state you're in Illinois, where Stella is based, the 100 Club of Illinois will pay for this. Stella SGB, DSR SGB. Nobody else is doing the dual sympathetic reset on 2 sides, and they will cover the cost of getting this done for any first responder in the state of Illinois. I'm trying very
Amazing.
hard to help public safety migrate what works in special forces units to reset the nervous system into public safety departments. And a lot of times people have FSA, flex spending, or health savings accounts that can be reimbursed, that can cover this in different states. And so I think the first step is reach out to me. I can fill in the information. We can sign an MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, is a non-legal document that just says, if you'd like to send referrals, I will help you streamline the process. And then we can start getting people taken care of on the Stella side. But the other thing in the bigger picture, like this book, Fallout, ends in 3 chapters about, okay, now I've gone through all the 10 common beliefs. Now,
right.
here are 3 chapters about what I'm working on right now that feels right and true and good for where we need to evolve. One is about Stella Mental Health, the story behind that whole effort and initiative. One is about Thin Line Advisory, where I'm
That's where I was
trying
going to go
to
next.
really,
Mhm.
yeah, I'd love to talk about that because,
Yeah, go
Yeah.
for it. Yeah.
yeah, I am really working to come into public safety agencies and departments not as a treatment provider, not as a, psychologist that does diagnosis and treatment and keeps medical notes, but in a very specialized, unique advisory role to equip peer support teams with insights that they won't get otherwise, that many psychologists actually don't get, and then command staff to advise command staff on human risk and how to really take care of their people, how to understand things like after a critical incident, how can you break trust with people without even intending to? Sometimes your silence is the thing that breaks trust. How do you
Mm.
help navigate collective grief after one of your officers is killed in the line of duty? Command staff are not supposed to get, trained in grief and loss, but they need to have an understanding of how to help people in their agencies to navigate that, as well as moral injuries. People are being smeared sometimes by their communities. Like, how do you walk people in your agency through that really damaging moral injury process and things like that? So I go in and do a lot of specialized work. And I love working with firefighting groups and firefighters, especially. And so I've started doing this weekly column for Crackle magazine to give people a taste of some of the insights I bring when I'm retained by departments as a special advisor. This really migrating, work I've done in the military with military leaders. The best leaders, they have advisors. Generals have advisors, and really taking it into public safety and saying, command staff, those are generals in that community, and so I'm an advisor to those people and an advisor to their peer teams.
Right.
Well, what about the person out there listening that, has had, these traumatic experiences, whether it's in combat or, on the front lines of what first responders do. And they're lacking that connection that we talked about here. And where would be some good places to actually find like interpersonal connections, like right
Ooh,
where they are right now?
that is a perfect segue into the other thing I'm actually standing up right now. So a couple months ago,
We're
the
we're vibing here,
Ventura.
Doc, again. We're vibing here again.
Yeah,
Anyways,
I mean, this is
sorry.
perfect, Will. This is so perfect. I was like, I got to work that in somehow, but now I don't. Um, Ventura County in Southern California has a very progressive innovations grant that my friend James Espinoza, who runs the Veteran Mentor Project, James and his wife April started the project years ago. And 5 years ago, they applied for an innovations grant. And about a year and a half ago, I came on as an unpaid senior advisor. I've never done this before, but I was just so impressed by him and impressed by this program. I wanted to do this for years, like for well over a decade. I've wanted to help stand up and build an army of mentors and first responders through transitions in roles and things like that. So about a year and a half ago, I came on, and about 2 or 3 months ago, we got the grant. And so I'm now their senior advisor and their
Nice.
clinical supervisor in an advisory capacity there as well. And we are building that team. And so if people want to join our team as peer mentors, they can be anywhere in the country. And part of being a peer mentor is getting trained and getting some mentoring. And so we might say, okay, we'd love to have you, but let us support some of what you need first or take you through our process. And then you can find meaning from your pain by helping bring other people out of the woods. So that's kind of the model. And I'm going to be playing a role in helping to train and resource and equip them. And with James, who's an Army veteran, he worked as a police officer for many years as well. So he's part of both communities. He's a program director and one of our sort of master mentors. He and I are both building this program together. And that's, I think, what makes it unique is that there are a lot of programs that have kind of like a clinician that like just signs off on risk, but like I'm in there to like build this thing with him and really build
Great.
something that will equip these mentors with different kinds of insights. And then he's got lived experience and wisdom. And his brother, Pedro Espinoza, died by suicide. And so he is a suicide loss survivor. And from the depth of that pain, he founded the project. And so, he has that wisdom of lived experience in working through and continuously working through that kind of grief and loss. And so when we talk about suicide with the mentors, we're going to give them an understanding of how suicide-related grief may be different and unique in certain ways. So yeah, I would say I'll give you the website later for the show notes, but it's basically the Veteran Mentor Project is the name of the project, and people can reach out if they want to be mentors in our program.
Fantastic.
Excellent.
Well, congratulations on the grant. Congratulations on everything that you have going on there. Amazing, Doc. And thank you for everything that you've shared on today's episode, being so brave to step forward and push against the norms, right? And really the heart behind it is very clear. You have that heart and fire.
Yeah.
We love that about you. So thank you for being here with us today. Will, I've got a couple of things, and then we'll wrap it up.
I mean, this has been great. I'll let you wrap, or Doc, if there's anything that you feel is missing in order to kind of like, make this a nice cohesive hour together, then please fill it in.
Well, I want to thank you both for acknowledging the courage that it takes to go against the status quo. I feel like I not only labor in obscurity for much of what I do, but I also feel like it's a lonely road a lot of the time. And I'm sure there's people at various places like with little dolls sticking needles in them when I'm kind of like, why think everything your professional career was based on is not the direction we need to be going in. And so it's hard. It's hard to say, I don't think therapy should be the first go-to for warriors and first responders. I think we need to do biological treatment first. Like, I'm sure that doesn't endear me to a lot of people who think, let's try therapy first, have always felt that way, deeply feel that way. It's associated with their values. And I'm saying something very different. Or, about resilience-based training approaches, or about how we assess suicide. Like, I think we need a different approach for this community. And it's often very lonely. And I appreciate the courage that you've shown in kind of backing me up. And I need this. I need warriors to say, if you're going to be out there, Doc, saying these things, you're not going to say them alone. Like, we're going to have your back and validate what you say.
Yeah.
And so many times during this conversation, I was like, thank you for validating that people feel this way on the inside of the community. Because otherwise it's just me saying it, and I'm open to, well, what do you know? I've never served. Well, I'm like you. I've never served.
Got it.
So,
Got it.
Well, we're all serving now.
to like say these things, and I say them with conviction because of my relationship with warfighters, because I'm a trusted doc to them. So I don't feel like I have a choice, but it's hard. It's hard, and it takes courage, and it's been hard breaking into public safety at times. What I have found is that there's very limited understanding of who I am and how my insights are different. And they put me in a bucket of, we've already got a psychologist, or we're already working with a company that provides psychological consultation. And I'm like, no, you might, and I keep working with them. That's great. I'm not trying to replace a whole bunch of clinicians. They have something very valuable to offer. That is not what I do. And I really need people to help public safety leaders understand how I have a unique set of insights and unique value to bring, because otherwise the door is triple locked, and these companies that are in there are like, why do you need her? We'll just do that too. And I'm like, okay, but they're not going to understand how grief is different from trauma, how moral injury needs a different approach, how we're missing so many who are at risk by suicide, how you can break trust in 10 ways to Friday without even knowing it. They don't have those insights. And so thank you for giving me an opportunity to kind of put that out there. And hopefully people will reach out to me and say, hey, we need progressive thinking. We need new insights. We want you to build our peer teams' understanding of mental warfare.
Yeah,
They
well,
will,
and
for sure.
we're here, men talking mindfulness. We're here to create awareness, and I think you being a pioneer in what you're doing, I also think we're seeing so much of the entire system. The hospital system, the medical system, even the
Yep.
schools and stuff like that. Everything is just starting to be questioned, thankfully, because it's just like, wait, like, why are we still doing this? And the outcomes are that. Like, I think we can
Yeah.
do better. And like, thank you for stepping up, and knowing you can do better. And also you have the results, and you wrote this book Fallout, and you're helping everybody everywhere as much as you possibly can with new ways of, uh, working with illness and identifying illness and treating illness. And this is what we need. And, so way to be the tip of the spear, on your end, of things. And this is what's required. And this episode's not going to go anywhere. It's out there for everybody. And hopefully we can look back on this in like 10 years and be like, oh, this is the new model of treatment. For real. I mean,
Well, that'd
and
be great.
this is what it takes. It's like, you're the
Yeah.
renegade doc, just like, a lot of the people that you work with, but, you have the warrior spirit that like inside of you in a different way. And this is the expression of your warrior. So thank you so much for sharing today, what you've been doing, with us and now with more of the world. So it's just an honor. I feel your heart with this. And that's where really what I love
No
about
doubt.
this. It's like you know what's needed, because of your experience, what can be done, and let's go out and do it. So people that are listening out there, it's like whatever you can do to get involved, right, to shift the paradigm, and to move forward in a way that actually is going to create more health within our communities, with people that have served our country. Then let's give us like write to Doc, write to us, and we'll make the connections. But thank you so much.
Yeah. Yeah,
Thank you.
Doc.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Will.
Of
Yeah.
course,
You
100%.
bring you bring your heart every single time. You bring the fire every
Totally,
single time.
totally.
And for our community, if this landed for you, or if you recognized a brother or a sister in this talk, or maybe you recognize some of this in yourself, don't stay in isolation. We are a community that shows up, and I'm not talking about special operations. I'm not talking about warriors. I'm talking about we here as the Men Talking Mindfulness community. You
Yeah.
can reach Doc at thinlineadvisory.com. Grab that
Mhm,
book, Fallout, and check out
mhm,
thinlineadvisory.com.
mhm.
And again, if this episode meant something, send it to one man or woman or whoever needs to hear it. This is how we take care of our community, of our own. And when we connect, we survive, right, Doc?
Right.
Yeah,
So
there we
thank you
go.
again, Doc. So thank you so much. This has been wonderful. And until next time, everybody rather, take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Doc.